We've had a little draw, and number one is Jamie Boylan. So, Jamie, if you'd like to start.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming here tonight. My name's Jamie, and I'm incredibly happy to be standing for election as Deputy in District 2. Firstly, I'd like to tell you a bit about myself, for some of you that might not know me. I grew up down at Troy Court, and I went to St Mark's School, which is now known as The Bridge. I'm a daughter, a sister, an aunt, and a mother to my daughter Bonnie, who's nearly 5, and my family have lived in the parish for over 30 years. I have a bachelor's degree from the Academy of Contemporary Music in Guildford, a diploma in music therapy, one in counselling. I'm a certified life coach, and I've also studied anxiety and depression, alcohol, drugs and addiction, and cognitive behavioural therapy with King's College of Psychiatry. I'm also currently studying my level 1 and 2 British Sign Language, so as you can see, I like to keep myself quite busy. I'm the owner of Be Vocal Jersey, and I work with children and adults on a daily basis of varying abilities. I absolutely love what I do because I get to help people achieve something every single day, whether it be standing up and singing a song, delivering a speech, or breaking down walls built up between families and allowing them to communicate for the first time in forever. I regularly work with events in Jersey, and I also work with a number of local charities throughout the year also. I love this island, and I love the people in it, and no place I've ever travelled to compares to home, and I think that everybody that lives here should feel that way. Our island has changed. In an island as wealthy as Jersey, we see families struggling to get by because wages have stagnated for years, but the prices for rent and food and everything else continues to rise. We've seen the need for food banks because people can't afford to buy food and pay the bills, even with 2 salaries coming in. We've seen departments that educate and care for our island cut in funding and cut again, but yet there's 26 million to spend on a new hospital and not one brick has been laid yet. It isn't acceptable, and it's time that our voices were heard. It's our children that will grow up into the decisions that we make now, so we need to make the right ones for them, well, for all of us. If elected, I'd like to have weekly surgeries within the parish so that you can come to me with any issues or concerns that you may have. I would propose working towards an education system that supports teachers and staff to do what they were trained to do. An education system that supports varying ways in which children learn so that our children have every opportunity and support to reach their goals. I would propose an increase in the support for our mental health services. All mental health services need to be working together. We need robust strategies in place and better communication. The staff within both of these services must be fully supported and listened to because they're the ones on the front line and they're the ones that can lead us in the right direction to create a better system to support our youth. I will also strive to improve the standard of living for families and islanders, and I vow to be a strong and formidable voice within the States. So if you do want change, you need to use your vote and your voice. Vote for me, Jamie Boylan, on May 16th. Vote for reform. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. We'll go to Louise.
Thank you, Roy. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming this evening. My name is Louise DOUBLET. I am an independent candidate standing for re-election as one of your deputies, a role which I have been in for the last 3.5 years. I'm standing for re-election. When I stood before you at the Hustings in 2014, I was a primary school teacher. And quite frankly, I was a bit fed up with the way things were going. We have so much potential here on our island, but there seemed to be some bad decisions being made. I wanted to make a difference and have a part in making things better for people in St Saviour, a parish that is very dear to me. I have spent my time working as hard as I can to do just that, representing you in the States Assembly. I didn't just take the paycheck and sit back. I have been active in participating in debates, asking questions, chairing a scrutiny panel, and I have brought several backbencher propositions, all of which were successful. The most recent one was a 3-part proposition to bring children into the centre of policy making in states departments. I was recently briefed by the Children's Commissioner, who is already rolling this out, meaning that considering children's rights will soon be an integral part of decision making. My degree in psychology and sociology helps me to understand people and the society around us, and I use these skills every day in my role. In terms of the parish, I want to continue building community. I've realised that loneliness is a modern epidemic, and it's affecting not just the elderly, but many different sectors of our community. Empty nesters and new parents, and across all different types of people. I really, really want to work on tackling this at a parish level, but also using any island-wide support systems that are available. I think events in the parish are really important. I enjoy organising these and attending them, and I would continue to do so. I'd like to work with other deputies and parish figures to do this. In terms of traffic and parking, which is a very difficult issue in St Saviour too, we've got many schools here, and it's been a really tricky one to tackle, but I'd like to continue working on this with the parish. And also ensuring that funding is forthcoming from the infrastructure department, because many of the roads that go through St Saviour too are administered by the States Department. In terms of environment in our parish, I'd like to see easier recycling and safeguarding our green spaces. And we can make more of what we've already got in terms of green spaces, in terms of providing activities for families to use those areas. And as always, I will remain available to assist my constituents with any issues that they have. This has been a considerable part of my workload, and I've helped with a range of different things from education to housing, and I would continue to be open and approachable so I could help people with those issues. In terms of my general policies, you can view those in my manifesto, but they focus on improving the quality of life for all sectors of our community. I want to continue working on issues around education, children, families, well-being and mental health. All of these areas are related, and my approach is to stop looking at them in isolation, but to ask, what do islanders want from life in Jersey? In summary, my promise to you, if I am re-elected, is I will continue to work hard, challenging where necessary, but taking an intelligent, compassionate and collaborative approach, and always keeping my parishioners in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Kevin. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I feel a bit of a dinosaur as I'm using bits of paper and not computers. My name is Kevin Lewis. I've been a deputy since 2005 in St Saviour No.2. I've got many roles I've held. I started off in scrutiny. I've been an assistant minister, and I was Minister for Transport and Technical Services for a few years. I'm now on scrutiny again, and I'm reviewing the new hospital project, which I'm sure you will agree was quite a challenge. I don't believe in long speeches, but I'm fully behind the student grants, which I voted for, and if re-elected, I will follow that through on the next medium-term financial plan to make sure that that goes through again for the next 4 or 5 years. Immigration. I think we really must have controls on immigration. As much as I think we need people coming into the island, we have to draw a line somewhere, because by 2035, I think we're going to have about 128,000 people living in the island, which is completely out of the question. We all know the flats down at Lamare. We will need at least another, I think 300 they're talking about, of that equation, just to house people, which is absolutely ridiculous. When I was Minister for TTS, I worked on the Safer Routes to School plan, the action plan, and that's something that's still ongoing. Obviously working with the Constable, with new projects up at Chasse-Brunet and a new crossing. So there's lots done, but there's plenty of work to go on with. From a personal level, I'm a governor of the Jersey Blind Society, and my wife Isabel and I run the Jersey Film Festival every year at Howard Davis Park, raising money for local charities. I think I'll draw a line there. I thank you all for coming and look forward to questions. Thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin. Okay, we'll start with questions. And as I said, we'll try and move around the hall, maybe start up with this side and then we'll move to this. Although, as I said, if things get bogged down, we'll try and ensure that both sides are obviously represented in questions. So is there anyone on this side of the hall who would like to ask a question? Oh, this side first. Oh, this gentleman. Yep.
I've got a mic.
Sorry, can you just wait for the microphone?
Mike O'Loughlin is my name. How do the candidates see the development of the finance industry over the next 4 years?
Okay, Louise, if you would like to start as number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Ogden. The finance industry is our main source of GDP in the island. I think there's been lots of talk recently of developing other industries, and I'm fully supportive of the hospitality and digital industries, but we mustn't forget finance. The finance is where I think a huge proportion of our islanders are employed, and I know that school leavers, huge amounts of them as well, will go on to work in finance. I think Brexit has huge opportunities for us in terms of broadening our finance industry, and I know that we will have powers to negotiate on under our own terms, and I do think there's real opportunities there for Jersey to stand in its own stead and not just be represented through the UK, but we'll have to consider the challenges that Brexit will bring as well, because I think London is going to be competing in terms of being an international finance centre even more now that the things have changed with regards to the EU. So, yeah, I am supportive of the finance industry. What I would like to see is some help given in terms of matching up skills, because we're losing young people from the island. They want to go to university, and then I think they don't see opportunities here and they don't want to come back. And I do hear from many of them that they don't want to go and work in finance because they see it as being as not very stimulating. But I know from friends and family that do work in that industry that it can be a very, very engaging role to have. So I want to work with the finance industry, and I'd like to see skills being matched up for young people and exciting job opportunities for them.
Thank you, Louise. Jamie.
Well, the finance industry remains Jersey's #1 employer and a really important source. Oh, sorry. Is that okay? Sorry about that. I'll start again. The finance industry remains Jersey's #1 employer and a very important source for the income of the island. We must support the industry in all its efforts to continue to be the top of the league when it comes to meeting our international obligations on transparency and cooperation, so we can offer a world-class service. As technology and automation changes the nature of work in the finance industry, we need to make the effort to support the livelihoods of those that work within it. With regards to Brexit, we currently don't know the effect that Brexit is going to have on us as an island. So for now, we need to continue operating with transparency and cooperating with international regulators. I have worked in finance, and yes, there is a lot of opportunities. But I think, again, people within schools and secondary schools and going into college need to be made more aware of the opportunities available to them within that industry, because currently they don't know much about it other than when you finish school you go and work in a bank. So they need to know more. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Kevin.
Yes, I fully support the finance industry. It is the golden goose that lays the golden egg, and we can't get away from that. We do have a brand new finance centre down on the waterfront there, and they've been given every facility going. And obviously finance firms are being attracted to the island. We do need to train more people, local people, so we don't need to bring so many in from outside. But it's going very well at the moment. I don't think we're going to be, I mean, I've got all the Brexit reports from the Crown dependencies. We will be affected, that's for sure. The UK doesn't know exactly what's happening yet, so we're very close on their coattails. But we do have permission now to negotiate our own terms with the World Trade Organization, so we can make our own deals outside of the island, which is certainly a step ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Good. Next question. Well, I will take this gentleman because no one's volunteered from that side. This gentleman.
Thank you. I think you all know me. I'm Dave Crocker from Jalais-Pommier. I'm a bit of a geographical prisoner, being surrounded by almost every secondary school in the island. For years and years, going back as far as Edith Keno, who was on the Education Department committee in the good old days, I tried to get her to stop the extension down at the Victoria College. She flatly refused. First of all, reneging on her immediate deputy duties to the parish and preserving her education above her parochial things. Now, what would you do as deputies to ensure that my quality of life does not diminish any further, and how will you go about discouraging parents dropping Tabitha and Timmy off to school all day, every day? I went to St Helier Boys. We never once had a traffic jam up there in 6 years, but it seems strange that Montmellet and thing are log jammed for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. So what will you do to preserve my life?
Okay, thank you. We'll simply move down the table and start with the different. So I'll start with Jamie again, please.
I thought it was Kevin, sorry.
No, we'll drop that and just move from there.
Well, yes, St Saviour's is the main location for the island's schools, and the traffic is a real issue. I believe that there are things in place currently, as I spoke with Constable Renard, and they are working with the Roads Committee and the parish to ease the build-up in areas within the parish where obviously all the schools are, and putting in the best crossings for pedestrians and things like that. As I said, I would like to hold weekly surgeries with parishioners so I can address certain issues that you have and know exactly what it is that we need to work towards to create a better and more peaceful parish for everybody. There is continual build-up, there is serious traffic in the mornings for schools. I know when I worked at Grainville, it took me hours to get there in the morning, and I used to have to get to work an hour and a half earlier than I was due to be there because I couldn't get there otherwise. So yes, there are some serious issues that need to be resolved within the parish, and working together with the other deputies and the constable, I think we can come to some sort of ease for everybody. Okay.
Thank you, Jane. Sorry to start you off.
That's all right.
Okay, Kevin.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, as I mentioned previously, we've been in talks with Department for Infrastructure. The parish has been working closely with them. We've had input into that. Chasse-Brunet is the bottleneck, which I'm sure you're aware, and hopefully that will be in motion within the next few months. Fingers crossed that particular bottleneck will be sorted and will send all the traffic around on the main roads. We've a lot of work has been done. We've got a new crossing on St Saviour's Road leading to Chasse-Brunet. Pedestrian safety, especially children going to school, is absolutely paramount. As I say, I've got the Safer Routes to School report there. We are working with the parish, with Department for Infrastructure, and we do have, I think it's about 11 schools in the parish. So we have the main block for the whole island here, which is one reason why we can't have the hospital on the St Saviour's site, because the parish would grind to a halt. But we are working on it with the constable and the parish, and hopefully this will be eased soon. We're not going to cure it completely by the sheer weight of numbers, but we do have a problem, obviously, that people think their children are not safe walking to school or cycling to school So they drive them to school, which just exacerbates the whole problem. So we need to break that cycle, have safe routes to school for children, and hopefully parents won't find the need to drive their children everywhere. We didn't have it when we were young. We walked or cycled, but obviously things have changed since then. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Louise?
Thanks, Dave, for the question. I think something that we really need to be aware of in terms of population growth, our population is currently growing. It doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. And the thing that I ask myself when considering population is, where are all the children going to go to school? And currently there's new classrooms being built on many of the schools in the island. So I think that's something we really need to watch out for in our parish, that even if a couple of extra classrooms are built and there's more pupil numbers, that's going to negatively impact. And even if there's some brilliant work going on at the moment that has already been spoken about, but that's going to be negated if we have more families travelling to the parish. So that's something personally I will be keeping an eye out for. We can't accept any more schools being built in this parish to accommodate the rising numbers of school children, and we need to keep a careful eye on class numbers and extra classes on the existing schools as well.
Thank you, Louise. Okay, to the next question. Don't be shy. This lady in the front, and then we'll take the other lady.
Good evening, I'm Maureen Morgan. I live in Jean-de-Pommier as well. We've seen in the last few days that the party system doesn't work, as 2 nomination papers have been questioned by the Royal Court. And, can I ask the candidates if they completed their own nomination papers, or did they rely on others to do it for them? Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Kevin?
Yes, I completed my own paper, yes. Started at the top, worked my way down.
Louise?
Hi Maureen, yes, I completed my own paper. Obviously my seconders filled in their own details and signed their details. I guess the forms were completed by myself.
Thank you. Jamie?
Hi Maureen. Hi Maureen, yes, I did complete my own form from top to bottom. My seconders filled in theirs, signed theirs, and I'm sure they can all answer that question as well, that yes, it was all completed by myself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll go to this lady.
In the front row, man.
Hi there, Kelly Langdon. Obviously, we can see that we've got a selection of candidates here, some who are running as independents and one who's running as part of a party. Can I ask all the candidates, if you are running with a party, why you specifically chose to run with a party, and if you are running as independents, why you chose to run as independents?
Thank you. So, Louise?
Thank you, Kelly. I have chosen to run as an independent. I don't feel that Jersey is quite ready for party politics. I think there are some good things that could come from party politics, but the system that we've got at the moment is still a consensus system, and that is what we've got. I can see that there's some real good intentions behind some of the party politics work that's going on, and I don't necessarily dismiss it, but it's just not for me at the moment. I prefer to take an approach where I can work with people from all sides of the State's Assembly. And I took that approach in 2014. I was independent then, I still am now. And I found that I've been able to make changes that way and be effective that way. So I've chosen to remain as an independent candidate in this election.
Thank you, Louise. Jamie?
Well, I am running as a member of a party, and I chose to do so because I believed in what they represented for me in the island. It was a voice that I hadn't heard before, and I wanted to be a part of that. I tell my kids all the time when I'm teaching that more voices, and when you work together, more gets done. Your voice is louder, you can be heard at the back of the room. In fact, if you work in a team, you can be heard island-wide, as it's now becoming quite apparent. So I chose to stand with reform because I think more gets done when you work together as a team.
Thank you, Jeremy. Kevin?
I have the opposite view. I'm independent and I will stay independent. But if somebody comes up with a good idea from any part of the chamber, a good idea is great. Depends on where it came from. It doesn't matter where it comes from. Barters may come in the future, but I don't think it's for me. I like to be independent.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Okay, the next question. I'll just see, just in case there might be other people. Anyone else? Okay, we'll take another one.
Pull a chair a bit closer. Yeah, we'll try to join it. Not only am I geographically isolated, I'm fiscally and financially isolated. We've just seen a wonderful education bill where you're going to get free university education for families who are 110,000. That's marvellous if you're within the finance industry. If you're at 110,000, but your kids get free education at university as well. So what about the poor people who are in what I call the working poor? The people who can't claim benefits, the people who are just teetering above the breadline, and where the people are getting caned by GST and every other punitive tax that comes in. I don't mind telling you that every time a health minister or an assistant health minister says, well, we're looking at putting prescription charges on again, my stomach turns over 27 miles and I'm almost physically sick. Because the first thought that comes to me is, I'm going to have to sell my house. And that's how I feel. And I do feel left behind by not only the parish deputies, but what will you do for the people like me in the poverty bracket, I call it, the working poor or just above?
Okay, what will the candidates do for the predicament of the working poor, or people who are in what you might call the poverty trap? So I think we now start with Jamie.
Low pay in the island has been a serious issue. Jersey's seen a huge rise in people struggling financially, and this is because of the low pay and zero-hour contracts being abused by businesses. We need to introduce compulsory regulations on zero-hour contracts and enforce minimum hour contracts for those who are in casual work. And we need to increase the minimum wage. That we've fallen behind Guernsey and the UK. People are struggling massively. Since income support started a decade ago, moving from parish welfare to income support a decade ago, there has been no full-scale review to evaluate the success of the scheme and to ensure that it's being targeted and accessed properly by those who truly need it. So a review needs to be had of that system with the objective of making the benefit system more user-friendly so that genuinely people that need to use it can use it properly and efficiently.
Thank you, Jamie. Kevin?
Yes, prescription charges. I will vote against the reintroduction of charges for prescriptions. That was one of the good things we did many years ago, so I will endeavour to keep the charges off that. 0 hours contracts, it's an anathema, especially for full-time employees, because if you're on 0 hours contracts, you can't sign a lease because nobody gave you a lease, because you don't have any security, you don't have any holidays, you don't have any pension entitlements, and not only can you not sign a lease, but having a mortgage is completely out of the question, and that really does trap people into poverty. So I'm absolutely against 0 hours contracts. And so what was the other part of the question? It's been trapped in poverty.
Well, it's got to be, we're kind of, people like me, are kind of trapped just above, so we don't fall into state assistance, we can't get any state assistance, because the first thing they say is, you're married or you're a mortgage.
Yes.
So you're buying a house, so they instantly dismiss you. They usually chuckle actually as awful disrespect you get at social security. If I go back to my engineering trade tomorrow, I'm really probably earning £600-700 a week. I would probably be here because it would buy involves.
Okay, sorry, just to summarise for the rest of you who may not have heard, this gentleman wants to know what are the candidates here going to do about the working poor. These are people who are sort of trapped, so to speak, but because, for example, they have a mortgage, they can't get income support, for example, to fill the gap. It's this group of people, and he believes from the earlier part of his question they've also not had a fair deal through the proposed changes to higher education support.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you're buying your own home and for no fault of your own you can't work anymore, you do fall through the net, which is extremely unfair. But if you'd like me to come with you down to Social Security to try and sort something out, more than happy to do that.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Louise.
Thank you for the question. This is something that I've considered before. When we're making decisions in the States Assembly, I try to understand how it's going to affect different sectors of the community. So Middle Jersey, and you're talking about the working poor, which is a distinct section. But first of all, we don't really have access to statistics that tell us where these bands are in terms of groups of people in our island. So it's really hard for us as states members to make decisions. So what I'd like to see is Statistics Jersey and the departments working together. And this will improve because it's now an independent unit, Statistics Jersey, and they've got access to all the data from within departments which they can collate and analyse. So I think states members need to hear what the real impact is of the decisions that we're making. And just one particular policy that I think would really help is the living wage. Now, several businesses are already bringing that in themselves because they can see the benefits, even though it might cost them a little bit more, they can see the benefits to the island and probably to their own businesses in terms of retaining employees. So the living wage, I think, would help a lot of people in this category to manage a bit better. But we must do that, we must provide support to the small businesses though, because some businesses might struggle with providing living wage. So we've got to use the savings that we make in terms of benefits and social security, that we're not having to top up people's wages. We've got to use those savings to help the small businesses. But generally, our tax and benefits system is a complete mess. I've been trying to help people with it in the past, and trying to understand it is just impossible. I don't know how people are supposed to use it and understand it and access it, so it needs to be completely reviewed, and I think that is coming in the new Assembly. So.
Thank you, Louise. Okay, the next question. You're not a parishioner, are you? We better run first with people from within the district, and then we'll come. I think there'll be time. People within the district. Okay, this lady in the front. Wait for the mic. Here it comes.
Hello, Maureen Morgan again. What are the candidates' views on the length of maternity or paternity leave, either paid or unpaid, and is it fair for states members to set their own terms for paid leave when others are bound by the law? Should the taxpayer or the employer be forced to pay for it?
I'm sure I can be corrected if I got it wrong, but it's what is the attitude of candidates to the granting of paternity and maternity leave, particularly in respect of states members, and not only states members, and should the public, what's your last? Repeat your last? Thanks, Maureen. So should the public pay for it, presumably through the taxation system, or should the employer pay for it or how should it be divided? Okay, thank you.
Kevin, maternity leave.
Yes.
I think 3 months is probably about right, and even less for... microphone's on. Oh, there you go. I'll bring it this way. I think about 3 months is about right in my book, and possibly 4 weeks for the male members of the family. I know that sounds a bit old-fashioned, but so that's me.
Who should pay for it, Kevin, or how should the payment be divided?
It should be divided, I think possibly, if it's 3 months, then possibly equally divided between the state and the employer.
Louise?
Thank you for the question. I think we need to take a slightly different look at parental leave. If we look at the 1001 days strategy, which was unanimously accepted by the States Assembly, and we've already seen some phenomenal improvements to the lives of children from that particular initiative, that shows us how important it is for bonding time for a baby with its mother and its father. So I think we do need a considerably longer maternity and paternity leave. And I personally have campaigned for equality in that area because I think that fathers have just as much right to care for their children as mothers do. I think paying for it, that's a tricky question. Because small businesses, I know that some small businesses perhaps wouldn't be able to cope with funding a lengthy period of parental leave. So I think there's got to be scope for the states to support those small businesses where possible, because small business owners have families as well. So I'd want to make sure there was a balanced approach tackling this issue.
What about states members who have all themselves 7 months off?
Yeah, the only point here is more we look at the general issues as much as as opposed to the personal issues, but that is an issue, a policy issue. So what's your view on how states members should be dealt with, Louise?
Okay, well at the moment it's on recommendation of PPC. It's not down to individual members. It's down to a recommendation from PPC. And PPC are actually working on this issue at the moment, and they're going to be bringing forward some changes to standing orders so that those people who are of childbearing age, because we want men and women of all ages to be in the States Assembly, and we don't want people to be excluded just because they're of the age where they're having children. So I think we should be accommodating that as well, so we can have a representative assembly. But that is going to be debated by the new assembly. So I hope that there are some proper regulations introduced so that it's not down to a recommendation from PPC, but there is something there that people know what they have and they haven't got.
Okay, thank you, Louise. Jamie?
Well, one of Reform's 10 pledges is actually to introduce 26 weeks statutory leave funded from social security contributions and 3 weeks minimum statutory annual paid leave. I am a mum and I am a small business owner, and I know that time I got to spend, luckily I am my own boss, so I got to spend my time with my child, but I also went to work and I have a supportive family who watched my child whilst I went to work. Having been able to do that myself, I know how valuable that time is, being spent with your child. And I do think it's really important that parents, both male and female, get to have those first couple of months, because it's a massive part in a child's development that they get to spend that time and grow and bond before you return to the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Okay, back to questions. Yeah, not a speech, eh? Is there anyone else? I mean, we love this gentleman a lot, but is there anyone else who's got another question? Anyone from the district who has a question that they'd like for the moment? Okay, we'll switch back, and then maybe if we run out of questions from the district, we'll open up to the non-district. Okay.
As long as it's not personal information, that is. But I do believe that we don't know who's coming into the island or who's here already. And I'm a strong believer in we need the ability to check police records as best we can. So how do you feel about ID cards and work permits?
In respect of immigration control, what do the candidates think about the use of ID cards and work permits?
Thank you for the question. So we've already got a semi-work permit system at the moment, which isn't working. So I'm not certain about that system. I think we need to look at the options. Personally, I'd like to see an Australian-style point system, and you could encompass elements of a work permit system within that. It would be flexible, so that if more skills and jobs are available in a certain area, or more skills are needed in a certain area, you could adjust the system to take account for that. So personally, I think a point system would tick more boxes, and you'd be able to respond to the needs of businesses there. Did you mention police checks? ID cards. I don't personally see a problem with ID cards. If I haven't particularly heard from the public that's something that people want, but if there was a proposition considering that, then yeah, I'd look at the evidence and weigh it up, and I don't particularly see a problem with ID cards.
Thank you, Louise. Jamie?
So I believe that in 2014, an interim target of 325 net inward migration a year was set, and it's been double and triple that in the recent years. It isn't sustainable for an island of this size, and it needs to be addressed. So the work permit and visa scheme really needs to be put into action, and the targets that are set need to be stuck to. I went to Australia. I knew that I had a year there. If I wanted to stay, I needed to apply for a second year. If not, I had to leave. It's pretty much that simple. If they are looking for a specific skill, you have to apply. If you have the skills they're looking for, you're allowed to come. If you want to extend the stay, you have to apply and pay. It's a privilege to live on this island. It's a beautiful, beautiful island. And if it continues to grow in population the way it does, it's just not sustainable. And not knowing who is coming in and you know, previous convictions and things like that, everywhere else you go in the world, America, Australia, New Zealand, those things have to be looked at and regulated, and it should be the same on an island like ours. So yes, I do believe that it needs to be done.
Thank you, Jamie. Kevin? Yes, I do believe in work permits, also background checks for criminal records, etc. There has been a problem, I have to word this very carefully, certain countries whose nationals come to Jersey, some are not registered on computers, so there's no real way of checking them. So basically, if you're a European Union member and you have a passport, you can come into Jersey. That's basically it at the moment. We do need work permits, we do need background checks, but we need to retrain as many local people as we can who are looking for employment. As I mentioned in my opening speech, the way we're having about 1,000 net migration, inward migration to Jersey per year. It was supposed to be about 350, 325, but it's actually 1,000. So as I mentioned earlier, by 2035, we will have 128,800 people living in Jersey, which is completely unsustainable. And as I also mentioned earlier, that's another 230 Lamare-style high-rise apartments we would need to house those people. And we would destroy everything that we love so much about Jersey. So we cannot allow that to happen. This is not scaremongering. This is the States of Jersey own statistics from the statistics department. So it's not me making this up, but that's a definite yes for me. We will always need people coming to the island, highly skilled surgeons, etc. But we must upskill and retrain as many of our own people as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, we'll try and again see if anyone in the district wishes to ask any questions. Any further questions from the district? There must be a lot of things on people's mind. You've got another one, have you? Okay. Well, let's... anyone else from the district at the moment? Okay, we'll take a last one from our very supportive questioners, and then we'll move to outside the district. So I'll ask this lady, Maureen, if you'd like to.
Hello, Maureen Morgan again, for the sake of the video. We've had a lot of talk about how finance is quite obviously the most important industry that we have. And a lot has been said recently about revitalising tourism. I'm not convinced that's going to happen, given the rest of the world has more to offer at cheaper prices than we do in so many ways. I'd like to know what the candidates' views are in starting new industries that could actually take some of the load off finance being the only set of eggs we have in the basket.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Basically a question about new industries which, in Maureen's phrase, could take the load off finance. I think we start with Jamie.
Hi, Maureen. Yes, Jersey is known for being a beautiful place, and that alone brings people here. But we do need to look into other areas. Digital is the new, fast developing area, so we must support businesses in this rapidly growing market. We should support digital skills agendas within schools so that young people can succeed within the industry. There's potential to attract innovators and opportunities to use Jersey as a testbed for new technologies. So if we want to be a part of the future, then we must be open and ready to be involved with it. Thank you. Well, digital isn't new. That's been going for quite a few years now. I like new innovative industries. So would I support new industries, or do I have an idea of new industries? For new industries? Yes. I don't know. It's not something that I've actually thought about. I'm not one that would think of a brand new industry. If I would, I'd probably be an absolute millionaire by now. So it's not something I've actually. It's not something I've thought
of. The question was. In that little mini debate, which we should have maybe, the questioner wants the candidate to focus on new industries as opposed to those we've already got. So Kevin, new industries.
New industries. Well, I wouldn't write off some of the old ones. I mean, obviously, finance is still strong. I would like to see tourism revitalised because I think there is still a lot of mileage in tourism. Sadly, as things are really taking off and we have cheaper airlines coming to Jersey, which is absolutely terrific, we don't have the hotel bed capacity. So we need to start building more quality hotels. I think in the 70s, a lot of the hotels were very tired. And, I mean, people are not going to walk down the corridor to a loo anymore. Those days are gone. So the guest houses need to really upgrade. Everything must be en suite. There has been a tremendous amount of investment in a few hotels. If you have a look at the Merton Hotel, the Seymour Group has spent literally millions doing that one up, and it's full most of the time, so they're doing extremely well. With IT, and IT-related things, as you know, you can be anywhere in the world, so that's something we could really latch onto. With regards to other industries, it's a difficult one because anything to do with manufacturing is not really on, because labour jobs go where labour is cheapest, and is not in Jersey. That's China, that's India, that's Malaysia. So we have to be very particular what industries we actually promote. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Louise?
Thank you for the question. I disagree on the tourism. Like Kevin, I think there's so much more potential there. And our visitor numbers are already rising. There's some really good work being done in this area. And I think in terms of perhaps a niche industry within tourism, wedding tourism, one of the propositions that I brought forward myself focused on humanist and open-air marriages. And now that all these changes are being implemented to our marriage legislation, I'm actually pushing for Jersey to be advertised as the honeymoon island. Come and get married here, have your honeymoon here. That used to be the case in days gone by. We were called the honeymoon isle. And I think there's a huge untapped market there. People spend thousands of pounds on their weddings. Well, come to Jersey and get married. Also, in terms of new ideas for industries, we need to look to our children. Now, our education system at the moment isn't helping children to be creative. We've got lots and lots of brilliant teachers, and there's so many good things in the education system, but there's just something stopping it from being the best that it can. There's too much testing, and there's too many targets and too much focus on data. So I want to see that changed, and I want to see a more creative education system. And our children will come up with the ideas for revitalising the future of their island. The children will save us all, that's what I think.
Okay, thank you, Louise. And we'll go to this gentleman.
You're behind me this time. Okay. We all know that our tax system is broken, but what really burns my ollies is companies that trade in Jersey making vast profits who avoid tax by being registered in AN other island or AN other jurisdiction. When GST 2020 and 010 was brought in, Mr. Osef and Mr. Terry LeSueur at the Times was quoted as saying, "I don't care if these companies pay tax anywhere in the world, especially not Jersey." So they introduced a broken tax regime before it actually got off the ground. What would you do about that tax structure? Have you got any ideas about changing it?
Okay, this gentleman's asking about the corporate tax structure, what you often see referred to in the press as the 010 system. Okay. I think Kevin will kick us off.
Yes, the tax system. Well, we did have a 010, which was a very ungracious race to the bottom, basically, to see who could charge less amongst all the Crown dependencies and all the overseas territories. We did have low-value consignment relief on the DVDs, but that was shut down. But I think actually tax system-wise, there's probably more money coming in than leaking out. But it is something that needs sorting out because it is very unfair. As I mentioned previously, I voted against the goods and service tax, the GST, and but it came in, and we're stuck with it for the time being. But it does penalise the less well off. We do have new stores coming in. We have Morrison's coming in, so hopefully that will help. They're actually selling wonky veg, which is something I'm very, very keen on because I've seen. Sorry.
We've got plenty of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've seen tons of it dumped on the North Coast because it didn't conform to supermarket specifications. So I hate waste, so I'm all for that. And possibly we could do with a Lidl or something similar in Jersey. That would be terrific.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Louise?
Thank you for the question. I'm not really a fan of 010, but I do understand why it was brought in. And I think we would have had bigger problems if it wasn't brought in, but it's definitely time to take a view across the board at all our taxes. The retail tax, I think was mentioned. That's starting to redress the balance a little bit, so where retail businesses which have a profit of over $500,000 will now be paying tax at 20%. I want to see that monitored so that it's not impacting on the people we were talking about before, the middle and low earners. But yeah, this needs to be part of a whole tax review because it's not fit for purpose at the moment, and I think people are feeling the effects of it, the ordinary people in Jersey are feeling the effects, so we need to review it, with bearing in mind that the finance industry does provide jobs to many of those people as well, so we need to take a balanced view on that when we review our tax system.
Thank you, Louise. Okay, we'll switch the meeting to... Sorry, my apologies.
Okay, so the tax system really needs to be reformed so that islanders and businesses are contributing fairly. It's vital that the 0% tax remains for investment businesses on the island, which depend on tax neutrality to remain viable. However, it's wrong that so many businesses trading in Jersey continue to make profits without paying tax. So we must work to establish a level playing field where businesses contribute their fair share in proportion to their profitability. And I don't believe that stealth taxes are a sensible alternative either. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. Okay, we'll take some questions from outside the district, and I know the lady in the front row's been very eager to ask a question, so if you'd like to go ahead. Oh, here's the mic.
Thank you. Hello, Samantha Morrison, St Clement. It's not a excuse me. It's not a secret that our mental health system is failing islanders all over. All age groups are struggling and have struggled for many years. If you are elected, what are your plans for improving the system, and what are your key priorities? Thank you.
I think it's Louise that will kick this off on the mental health system and what approach the candidates will take to A, analysing what is wrong, and B, improving the system.
Thank you. Great question. This is something to do with wellbeing I had on my manifesto in 2014. And I did ask questions of the health minister, and we were given this. I did bring with me today the mental health strategy. It's a huge piece of work, and that was started in 2015. It's still ongoing, and I think there's been some ups and downs. So some of the questions that I've asked, specifically about waiting times, has shown that they've reduced, but then recently the waiting times have increased again. And if you look beneath the statistics, part of that is due to there being more awareness around it, so there's more people accessing those therapies. I know that they're training more staff to deliver those therapies as well. I think we need to train more people on island. You know, there's young people looking for jobs. That could be a really rewarding profession for some of our young people, is working in the Jersey talking therapies. So we've got to continue investing in that service, and if I'm re-elected, this is something I'd like to continue working on. I mean, now that we've had this mental health strategy for just over a year, nearly 2, and it runs till 2020. I think now is the time to start talking again to the people who are accessing the service and see what they think of what improvements have been made. Also, prevention. You know, we're leading such busy lives in Jersey. All of these other issues like population and housing costs, quality of life, cost of living, it's all linked. When you look at how many people are suffering from anxiety in Jersey, it's much higher than the UK, and that tells me something about our lifestyles. And I think we need to take a holistic view of our busy lifestyles and try and prevent problems by facing our issues in a slightly different way.
Okay, thank you, Louise. Jamie?
I believe that early intervention is a must when it comes to mental health. It's something that I'm really passionate about. 50% of mental health issues are established before the age of 14 and 75% of them before the age of 18. And the mental health services on the island need to be improved. The waiting time currently for talking therapies is around 7 months. A lot can happen in 7 months. Mental health issues can escalate at a rapid rate if they aren't addressed in time. And I believe that education and mental health should work hand in hand, enabling teachers to work with children both in a mental capacity as well as an academic capacity. Teaching children really early on ways to deal with stress positively and manage stress is going to be really beneficial to children island-wide. So starting that in primary school, mindfulness techniques. It's introduced in schools worldwide, and the change in children growing up are more relaxed, more able to learn. When children are relaxed and happy, they learn more. So well-being and education should work together hand in hand, as I've said. And all the mental health services within the island should be working together. I said it in my opening speech that we need robust strategies in place, and that's exactly what I mean. The staff within these services need to be fully supported and listened to, because they're the ones that know what's going on with the island. They can guide us in the right direction, and change needs to happen quickly, because the waiting times for people is just unfair and it's causing unnecessary suffering. Training people on island the same way as we do currently with our nurses would be a massive step in the right direction, I believe. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. Kevin?
Yes, well, the states of Jersey, and in particular the health department, have actually just woken up to mental health and giving it a complete overhaul. There will be some considerable investment in the not too distant future, and I believe Overdale has been earmarked for this. Regards training local people is absolutely fantastic, but with the healthcare there is a problem that I attended a nurses meeting at the town hall the other night, where they are extremely unhappy that people were given a pay rise but not the nurses, and everyone was told, don't tell the nurses you've got a pay rise. So I think the nurses need a pay rise and an apology for the appalling way they've been treated. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, any other questions? On this, this gentleman. Yep.
Yamash, what would you do about the extortionate prices of rents and houses on the island?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't quite catch that.
What would you do about the extortionate prices of rent and housing on the island, particularly in the social sector?
Okay, what would the candidates do about the extortionate prices of rents and houses on the island, presumably when you try and buy one? Okay. We'll start with Jamie.
It is safe to say that Jersey's housing market is broken. The cost of housing is a leading contributor to the struggles that islanders face. We also have a much lower home ownership rate than in the UK. Buying a home shouldn't be a pipe dream. It should be attainable for most people on a really wealthy island like Jersey. It's clear that housing costs in Jersey are too high and it needs to be addressed urgently. As Reform, we propose a rent freeze on the social sector of housing and research to develop a fair rent regulation system across all of the sectors. It needs to be addressed. It's causing so much problems for families, well, not just families, all islanders. A gigantic portion of your wage is spent on rent, and it's substandard accommodation also, so that needs to be looked into and addressed really, really urgently. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Kevin?
Yes, well, actually, Andium are actually doing quite a bit to upgrade the housing stock at the moment, but the rents are going up exponentially. It does seem bizarre to me that lots of young couples spend much more on nursery care than they do on their mortgage, which is absolutely horrendous. I would like to see rents stabilised, and also like to see more shared equity schemes to enable young people to purchase their own homes. And I think that's something we really need to work hard on for the future, because young people are being priced out of the market completely. To buy a house now, a lot of young people are being asked for a deposit of £80,000 deposit before you start to purchase the house. And if you're paying Jersey rents, that just puts it completely out of everyone's reach. So that's something that does need to tend to.
Thank you, Kevin. Louise?
Thank you for the question. I was looking at figures on average three-bedroom house prices, and at the moment it stands at just over £500,000 for a three-bedroom house, and our average wage is just over £37,000 a year, and it just amazes me how anyone manages to buy a house, even if you are in a couple and you have a bit of help. I think that's the only way that people manage it these days is by having help from parents. It's very difficult, and it's impacting on all these other areas. It's terrible for children when they're in substandard accommodation. So this is something that needs to be looked at again with a holistic viewpoint. In terms of rents, you know, the way that the rents are calculated for social housing as being 90% of the market rate, to me that's just nonsensical, and I wish I'd been in the States Assembly when that policy was set, because I would have voted against that. It's ridiculous. That needs to be reviewed, and I think several of the senatorial candidates are talking about this, so I think there would be a real political will to look at that policy. I also want to look at things like charges. When you sign a new rental agreement, you're often charged a full month's or a full week's rent just as an administration fee. Now that kind of thing is illegal in the UK now. So we need to look at those kind of top-up charges that are being imposed on people that are renting. And I totally agree with the idea on a shared equity scheme. I think there was a test group of about 50 people a few years ago that accessed a scheme like that, and it worked really well. I was talking to one of them the other day, and they're a happy family in their home, but then I know other families that just don't have that. So I think, to be fair, we need to extend that scheme, and a states assisted loan scheme as well. There's lots that the states could do to help with housing costs.
Thank you, Louise.
Okay. Any other questions? This gentleman and then we'll...
Thank you. David Morgan, Jardin Pommier. Do the candidates support outsourcing of states' jobs, as TTS have done after Kevin Lewis's time?
Sorry, can you repeat the last part of your question?
Do the candidates support outsourcing of states' jobs, as TTS have done after Kevin Lewis's time?
Okay.
Outsourcing of states' jobs, particularly with reference to TTS or Department of Infrastructure, as it's now known.
Okay, Kevin.
Basically, no, I was not in favour of that at all. I made my feelings very clear. I just find it absolutely bizarre that people were let go, for want of a better word, or made redundant. Some people maybe didn't get the best start in life, but they had a pride in their work. Gardeners, toilet cleaners, and many other professions of that ilk. And people were taken on 0 hours contracts and it was all subcontracted out. So the same passion is not there. People literally taken off the boat, given a job and a mop, and told to get on with it. And I've seen some horrendous things of hedgerows being cut with chainsaws, people with no eye protection, no ear protection, and complete disregard to health and safety. And the people that were put out of their jobs, and if they're in their sort of maybe early to mid-50s, not a hope of getting another job, so the rest of their life will be on benefits. So the value to Jersey is absolutely nil, and people's lives have been ruined. So no, I'm not in favour.
Thank you, Kevin. Louise?
And thank you for the question. I think outsourcing of jobs within states departments, it's something that has to be considered, because we do need to make efficiencies in the states. So that's what we have been doing. And I think in some cases, there might be a case to be made for outsourcing some of the jobs. But I'm not sure, particularly in the infrastructure department, I'm not sure that it actually has the overall effect of saving money for the taxpayer, because when you bring in outside companies who can do it at a cheaper rate, it's invariably because they're paying their workers a lower rate of pay. And then those workers are not then spending the money in the economy, they're perhaps having to be topped up with income support. So it has the net effect of not saving any money to the taxpayer, It does save that particular department, but it's not saving overall. So again, you need to look at the bigger picture. And I think there is an example, I think there's like a care charter being drawn up for workers that are providing care to those in the community who need it. So it can be done in a way where there's agreements in place there that the companies are paying their workers a fair wage and fair terms and conditions. So I wouldn't want to write it off completely. Again, a balanced approach would be needed.
Thank you, Louise.
Again, I agree that sometimes work needs to be outsourced to people. Maybe if there's something in particular that needs doing that can't be done within a certain department, that's probably the only time I would agree with outsourcing to subcontractors, because again, low wages, low payments to staff, and everybody being topped up by income support, it's just a vicious, vicious circle that needs to be broken. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Okay, this gentleman again.
It's a question in two parts, really, both sort of thing. We all know scrutiny matters, and I know there's a wealth of scrutiny up there at the moment. But to my mind, it seems to fall away when it gets great suggestions, great ideals, brilliant reviews, but then it falls on deaf ears when it reaches the Council of Ministers. And to my mind, that's just a lot of wasted, good, great energy. What teeth would you provide scrutiny? That's the first part. And the second thing, the question would be, is would any of you consider bringing or supporting a motion to stop the hospital debacle dead in its tracks and find a reasonable new build site from scratch?
Two quite separate questions. I wondered when the hospital was coming up, particularly given, obviously, St Saviour's Hospital is in number 3, and as I think Kevin mentioned earlier, a lot of the anticipated traffic, if it went there, would obviously travel through number 2. So it's an interesting question. Thank you for bringing that up. So the second question was, would you be prepared to stop the hospital building in its track, the proposal? And the first one was, which we'll start with, how can we give, there are wonderful reports from scrutiny, but it seems to be ignored. How can we give scrutiny more teeth? So Louise, take scrutiny first.
Okay, thank you. Scrutiny. So I've chaired the Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel, and at times it has been really, really frustrating. It depends on the minister. In my experience, ministers that have served on scrutiny themselves understand the process and they give respect to the process, and there's a dialogue there. So I wonder if that's something that the public should be asking when they're electing the senators. Have you served across various roles before you're trying to go for a ministerial post? I'm not sure about the system that we've got at the moment. Having worked in scrutiny and faced that kind of negative reaction to reports and having to battle and battle and battle, for example, on the nursery funding. Now, my panel produced an extremely well-researched report which gave reams and reams of evidence as to why that was a bad policy decision, and it was completely ignored by the minister. And it was only after we applied consistent pressure, and that takes up a lot of time, and then that's not time well spent by members of the Assembly. We're better spending our time listening to each other and cooperating. So I'd actually like to see a slightly different machinery of government. The ministerial system isn't really working. Ministers are making these decisions in isolation, and some of them aren't listening to scrutiny, and there's so much, there's, I think, a reasonable amount of public money being put into the scrutiny process, but we're not getting value for money. So I'd like to see a ministerial, perhaps a hybrid system, where there's consulting committees around ministers. So I think decisions could be better made by those ministers if they're talking to a wider range of
Don't forget,
members.
Louise, you've got to get the
do I need to do the
hospital in as
one
well.
now? Okay.
Bernie will allow a very quick hospital answer.
Okay, well, it relates to the machinery of government because some of the terrible decisions that have been made about the hospital, I think, have been made because we've got an isolated minister who has perhaps not been in touch with taking the political temperature. Yeah, so I think if we address those systemic issues, then perhaps that wouldn't happen. Personally, I would have put it on the waterfront, but I was told that was not a politically viable decision. You know, I'm not one for going back on decisions. I think the public want us to make decisions and stick to it and see it through. But if somebody comes up with a viable and speedy and cost-effective scheme, I would reconsider it. I mean, I do think we need to see it through. People need a hospital, but I'd be prepared to consider something, but it would have to be a really good proposal.
Thank you, Louise. Jamie.
Hi. So working within a party, obviously, we have more voices working together towards a desired goal. And I think that by working together, we can get that done. I also think that the ministers need to have a lot more transparency when they're making these decisions because, as we've already seen within the hospital, a lot of recommendations were ignored. The clinical staff weren't listened to, and decisions just went ahead without the agreement of everybody involved. With regards to the hospital, I do believe it is the wrong decision to place it where it is right now. It's not right that 26 million has been spent with not one brick laid or anything to show for it so far. But I do believe that a site in town is probably, or in the vicinity, is the best option. But I don't believe that all the sites were looked at properly or recognised as such. And I think the decision to build on the current site should actually absolutely be reconsidered. As we have said, the waterfront would be everybody's main choice, I'm assuming, so far, because that's where everybody I've spoken to has said that they would like it. But the decision has been made, but hopefully it can be reconsidered.
Thank you, Jamie. Kevin?
Scrutiny-wise, I've been on two main panels scrutinising the finance centre and, as I mentioned earlier, the new hospital site. So I have in-depth knowledge on that. I did want it to go on the waterfront, but it was not to be. Several buildings have actually been built on the waterfront now. So a hospital on that site would be a compromise of sorts. We've had problems, of course, because with scrutiny reports, because the Council of Ministers had collective responsibility, which meant that all ministers and assistant ministers at that time had to toe the party line and basically do as they're told. And they had the majority. So we were completely outnumbered. So it didn't matter how good your report is, it had scant regard. Regarding the location of the hospital, let's say I did want it to go on the waterfront, but now that time has, I believe, has passed. But wherever we put the hospital, it must be within the ring road of St Helier. Anything else would be a complete disaster. The General Hospital at the moment has 1,252 staff. 9 o'clock in the morning, 800 staff start work. Now you can imagine if they were based on the site of St Saviour's Hospital, with the school run in the morning, the island would literally grind to a halt with that many people on the road. And that's not taking into account, because the hospital obviously is 24/7, that doesn't take into account the people coming off shift at the time. When we had, I was a minister at TTS, we had a collapse, St Helier had a collapse in Mount Bingham. The road was closed for 3 months. And we had a downpour of rain, everybody got in their car, and it was complete and utter gridlock. And that's what would happen if we have the hospital anywhere other than in St Helier Ring Road. I'm more than happy to look at other sites, but it must be in town. 40% of the staff who work at the hospital live in town. They walk to work. If they decide to get in their cars, we're in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I think you've all been very attentive, and we have actually covered a lot in the questions. So I think we'll probably aim to finish at 8:30. I don't wish to sort of spread the agony, so to speak. spread the agony, so to speak. So we'll maybe have time for a couple more questions. Is there anyone within the district would like to ask a question? Yes. Well, I'll rephrase that. Is there anyone other than our award-winning questioner who would like to ask a question? Okay, I know the gentleman in the front row wishes to ask, eh? Okay, ask again.
The higher education funding has only been secured for 3 years and is set to be reviewed in the next medium-term financial plan. What do you think should be done to make the HE grant system sustainable?
Everybody get the question? The higher education money is only for 3 years. It's not been incorporated in what they call the medium-term financial plan. That's the one that tries to lock things in for several years. And the question is, how can we make that funding sustainable? In other words, how can it continue beyond the 3 years and be guaranteed, assuming there's not a total collapse of the economy, be guaranteed beyond that? Okay. I think we've got Kevin.
As I mentioned earlier, if re-elected, I would support the renewal in the medium-term financial plan to make sure that the grant carries forward. It would be completely unfair for someone to start a course and then funding be pulled. That would be completely unfair and completely unreasonable. So that would have my full support. At the moment, we are having, before we agreed the new funding, we had a situation where parents told their eldest they could go to university, but the second and third child was completely out of the question and had to follow another career. But now we've given parents some certainty, which I will support going forward.
Thank you, Kevin. Louise?
This is a really difficult question, which is why it went on for so many years without there being a solution. I think it's a start that we're funding it for a few years. I think it's going to take the entire States Assembly working together on this and taking it seriously. For a start, the money at the moment is part of the Education Department budget, and I don't think they've really had the scope to address this issue. So the funding needs to be put in a different department, perhaps economic development, where they can really get to grips with it. I can only say that I think it needs to be considered as an investment, not just a cost, because when we're putting money into our young people, we'll see the benefits back as well when they return to the island. And making better job opportunities available when they do come back to the islands, then we'll get more of that investment back. So I think there's work to do with industries there as well. What else was I going to say? And I'm not sure why a loan system or even a partial loan system wasn't considered, because when the scrutiny panel looked at this, we were told that because we couldn't guarantee people would pay the loans back, that wasn't being considered. Yet we're now doing a grant system. So I think there's scope for considering some different options and going back to look at some of those options as well. And that work will have to be done, and we need to start thinking about it at the beginning of this term of office and not leave it to the end and rush it like has happened this time.
Thank you, Louise. Jamie?
So as I mentioned earlier, our tax system needs to be reformed. We're currently on a two-tiered system, and if we put that down to a one tax calculation, there'll be a bigger margin of profit from that. That profit could be actually used to support the public services and actually go to supporting students going to university and into higher education. It's an investment into their future, but it's also an investment into the island's future, because they'll be coming back with the skills and knowledge and bringing it all back home, so we can support it that way.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Now, this is the point. I am going to stop questions now, because as I said at the... did you have a question? No, we've really... no, I think very quick. Is it a very quick one? What is it? Yeah. No, sorry, Maureen, the lady behind you. Yeah.
Just an opportunity for you to be aspirational, maybe give a more happy answer. What is your vision for the parish community over the next few years? And do you have any initiatives or events you'd like to introduce to bring us closer together as a parish? Thank you.
Okay. That's a good one to end on. It's not quite the brief one I thought. No, it's okay. Okay, so what's your vision for the parish and any particular events that can sort of really help move things forward? Is that correct? Good. Louise.
Thank you. Great question. I think it has been quite difficult to build community in St Saviour's because we don't have that single hub like many other parishes have with the school and the church and a lovely green and a cafe. We don't have all of those things all together. So I think we need to work a bit harder. I'd like to actually see, because we've got the 3 districts with different deputies in, whoever gets elected, I'd like to see us working together to build community across the whole parish and not just in isolation in our districts. And I think we do so much for our elderly. There's some fantastic events put on by the constable, and the elderly, they have a chance to mingle. I've tried to put some things in for young families, and that's been supported by other people in the parish as well. And it's been really enjoyed by the families that have come to those events. So I want to continue with that, really. I want to carry on doing the Christmas parties and Easter egg hunts and something in the summer as well for the children at the end of term. And mixing, not just having the family events and the events for the retired parishioners, but to get people mingling a little bit more. So I'd really hope that when the new deputies are elected and the constable, we could all work together to achieve that.
Thank you, Louise. Jamie.
Thanks for the question, Jess. I was actually speaking with Constable Renard not so long ago and was talking about having a parish choir. Obviously, I love music. It's something that I'm really passionate about. I work on events all throughout the island, such as Big Gig in the Park and Pride and the Harvard Park Seaside Festival, and I do get the youth of the island involved, showing off and showcasing their talent. And I think events like that really bring communities together because it's something for young and old. And I think we could do so much more of that within the parish of St Saviour. A lot of it is in town, but we do have the opportunity. We have all the schools here. Get the children involved, bring their parents, bring their nana and granddad. It's something that all of us can get involved with, and all of us, as we said, should be working together as an entire parish, not just single districts. So yeah, I'd like to see a lot more of that in the future.
Thank you, Jamie. Kevin?
Yes, parishioners may know that the parish church has been done up and modified. It's looking splendid, and it has lots going on there now with childcare facilities. I myself, as you know, maintain the church clock. Apologies, it's 30 seconds slow. I can hear it in the background. I'm a member of the Parish in Bloom, which helps keep the flowers in the parish nice and sprightly. We help out the Battle of Flowers, which is still going strong. That's a great community event. It brings all parts of the parish together, and there's a lot of hard work, but it really pays off. We haven't had a big award for a few years, so we're hoping for something this year. My wife Isabella and I run the Jersey Film Festival in Howard Davis Park. That brings people from all over the parish, in fact all parishes on the island, and raises money for charity, and it's a great community event. So I'm all for events, bringing people together.
Thank you, Kevin. This is the moment when we ask the candidates, and they might need a little breathing space. We ask them to summarise any final thoughts they wish to present to you in 2 minutes. It did remind me, well, I'll give them a little time to get their thoughts together. Jamie mentioned musical events. There used to be a custom, which I'm not sure all attendees enthused at, but Sadie will like to know that when the post-Christmas lunches were held, the deputies used to form a little chorus and lead the sing-song. Now, whether you think this is the highlight of the year or the downlight of the year, you'll obviously make your own mind up as to the singing capabilities of the deputies. But there was one musical event run for community purposes. Said you'll have to ask the audience whether they were that impressed. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed tonight. I must to speed things along, I'll give a little speech now, and then the candidates can give their final thoughts. I would like to thank them. It's for everybody, new and sort of what you might call established members. It's quite a grueling event. You never know what will be thrown at you, and it's good that things are thrown at people and that they have to prove that they can think on their feet. So I would like to thank them very much. And I would also like to thank the organisers, people, Bernie and Mandy, for having manned the microphones. That was excellent. Constable for having granted us the hall. Thank you, Sadie, and thank you for coming. And all of you for coming. But I don't want to rush the speech too much, because now it's the turn of the candidates. And I think I'll probably, I don't know if they have any strong views, we'll just sort of redo the what was done at the start. So, Jamie, that will be you, I think, again.
As I said at the beginning of this evening, I love this island and I love the people in it, and I don't think there is anywhere that I love more than Jersey. So I'm a dedicated and motivated individual. You won't find anybody that works harder than I do, as often as I do. All I can say is that I would work tirelessly for the parish, and I would work tirelessly for the people within the parish and within the island. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Louise.
I want to reiterate thanks to everybody who's come here tonight. I know it's probably easier to watch it at home when it's online, but it's really important that people do come and participate. So really thank you, and thank you for all the questions. I know that there might be people watching this online, parishioners watching after the event on vote.je. So if there's anybody who couldn't make it here tonight who is watching and who does have a question, I think, well, I think I probably speak for all of us actually, that you can always contact us. Our contact details are on vote.je. So please engage with us, because now is a really good time to get your views forward and get the things that you want to see happening into the States Assembly. And we want to hear that from you, so please do get in touch with me. And I just want to reiterate my promise to you: if I'm re-elected, I will continue to work hard and challenge where necessary, and I'll always take a compassionate and collaborative approach. And I will always keep my parishioners in mind. So I hope you'll consider giving me 1 or 2 votes for deputy. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Jamie. Oh, sorry, Kevin. Kevin.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Right. Thank you, Roy. Yes, I would reiterate that. We are in the, present deputies are in the phone book, so you can always contact us, or online on vote.je. All our details are there. I don't do surgeries. I did a while ago, but I came to the conclusion a lot of people have very personal problems, and they do not wish to queue up in line and discuss their personal problems. So if you contact me with a problem, I will come to see you in your home, or if you wish, we have rooms in the States building that are designed to receive people, and we can discuss it there. Not a problem at all. I will just say one word about my leaflet. It has been pointed out to me by personal persons unknown that this young chap here has jet black hair. Since that was taken, I have acquired some highlights, but it is still me. So please consider me for one of your votes in May 16. And can I just finish by thanking Roy Laharissier, who was a great stalwart, and we miss him, and I miss the Werther's originals. And he's been great at chairing us tonight. Thank you, Roy.